When I was about 9 years old, I broke a dish and was sent up to my room. I went up and felt strange, like I was in an unfamiliar place. I don't know why. I got chills and very cautiously nudged the door open to look inside. My room was all different. There was different furniture inside. I felt an icy stab in my chest when I noticed the silhouette of a man against my brightly lit window. I managed to let out a sorry before bolting down the stairs, screaming for my parents. They went up and just shook their heads. Sure enough, the room was completely normal. I just forgot about this as I got older. Years later, our longtime neighbors sold their place and the new family had just moved in. They had a daughter around my age, 17 at the time. I noticed her right away because she was gifted and didn't seem shy about it given her choice of attire. One day, I was upstairs in my room and noticed her in the backyard. So I just stood there like a creepy teenager staring at this girl. Then I heard a tiny sorry behind me and the door shutting. This scared me to death until I remembered what happened when I was 9. I ran downstairs to my parents just as before. I asked them if they remembered the time I broke the dish and they sent me upstairs. I asked if they remembered when I said my room was different. They said I was always keen to make up BS stories to get out of trouble, but they did recall me saying that there was a man in my room looking out the window. I've actually covered several stories just like this one before, and we actually even have some that are similar to it later in the video. It almost sounds like there was a sort of wrinkle in time for a quick moment. Just a very weird phenomenon in general. My mom is a type 1 diabetic, has been since she was 11 years of age. When me and my little brother were very young, I was about 7 and he was 5, I came into my mom's room to find that she was acting extremely strange. She looked almost drunk and wasn't really responsive. I went to pick up her insulin needles to see if she would react to them, and she didn't. I panicked and phoned my nan, who told me to put the phone down and dial 999. I was so frightened and confused that I didn't. About 5 minutes later, this woman just walked into my mom's bedroom, called me by my name and my brother's, and said she knew my mom and that help was coming. She was calm, soft-spoken, and had a warm feeling about her. I didn't recognize this woman, and neither did my brother. Shortly after, the ambulance arrived and got my mom's sugar levels back up. When I went to find the woman, she was gone, literally gone. When my mom came around, I explained this mysterious woman to her and what she looked like. My mom had absolutely no idea who she was, and we never saw her again. If she didn't help us, my mom would have died eventually. Still gives me shivers now. This happened about 16 years ago, and I still don't know how to wrap my head around it. So my friend and I were sitting on my brother's bed watching TV, just chatting and hanging out. My brother had a box of metal BB pellets on the bed that we didn't bother moving because he had his stuff everywhere. While we were hanging out, my big German Shepherd Guinness came running into the room playfully and jumped up onto the bed, causing the box of BB pellets to flip over and scatter everywhere. I still remember the sound of them hitting the hardwood floor. However, as this was happening, it was as though time reversed. Literally rewound, and my dog ended up back on the floor as if he jumped back downwards, and all the BB pellets reversed back into the box. Even Guinness had a look of confusion on his face, and he ran out of the room. When we looked down, there were absolutely no pellets on the ground, and the box was closed and secure on the bed. My friend also remembers this in vivid detail. Otherwise, I would probably convince myself it was a weird dream, but we both experienced it and remember it all these years later. We were probably 13-ish at the time. Anyone else ever experienced something like this? Now, earlier today, I came across this Reddit thread made just a couple days ago where OP asks, what is the most eerie thing that's ever happened to you? There were some very interesting posts in that thread, so that's where these next couple entries are coming from. I'm a medic and a firefighter. We once had a call for something normal, like chest pain or something, I can't remember. The caller said he was in his garage. We pull up on scene, and something just felt off. No idea why, but something told me in my gut that something was wrong. I decided to do a 360 around the building before we went through the door at the front that was clearly the entrance. I walk around and come to a window on the side of the building and look in. There was a shotgun rigged to the door. The guy had set a booby trap for us, and he had hung himself as well. We kicked in this plexiglass-type material on the side of the building and entered that way. Guy was dead. Nothing we could do about it at that point. I would have been the first through that door. I have no idea why I didn't just walk through it that day. Now, while that's obviously disturbing as hell, somebody left a reply below this that serves as a sort of explanation behind what might have actually happened here. There's a book called The Gift of Fear that has numerous stories about people getting a strange feeling and behaving in ways they usually would not. Basically, the author states that there's some primitive survival instinct of our brain that picks up on anything unusual. This is often done without a rational brain being aware. That's why you just get this funny feeling in your gut that something's off. It's fascinating how we've evolved to survive as a species. I was driving home per usual and got this random, unwavering feeling that my house had been broken into. I kind of laughed and said, "Please don't let my house have actually been broken into," out loud as I turned the corner onto my street. The first thing I noticed when I pulled up to the house were the blinds on my bedroom window. They were yanked around and twisted up. Some guy that lives across the street turned out to have been stalking me and decided to climb through my bedroom window. He took nothing valuable, just some weird personal items. It was terrifying to walk in and see my things rummaged through. It was even scarier when I talked to the neighbor and they admitted that multiple people in the neighborhood had seen it happen, but they were all too scared of old dude to say anything. The weirdest part of it all, and I mean this guy took some creepy personal things, is that nagging feeling I had before I found the remnants of the break-in. I swear I knew before I knew, and that's such an eerie feeling. I had one of those dreams that you couldn't wake up from. I knew I was asleep and I was aware, but I couldn't wake up. I was absolutely terrified, thinking that I was stuck in, like, a coma or something. I had a gun with me for some reason, and as the terror of not being able to wake up grew, I, for some reason, had a thought and belief that if I killed myself in the dream, I would die in real life. And I thought that that was a better alternative than being in a coma. So I brought the gun to my head and pulled the trigger. I physically felt pain in my temple and heard the shot. I woke up right afterwards. I had a full-blown premonition once. My friend was going to be married in a few months, and I was in the wedding. We had been planning the bachelor party, but didn't get into any specifics yet. One night, about 3 months before the wedding, I had this extremely intense dream. In the dream, I'm sitting in a restaurant with all the guys at a table, and I look to my left and see a big window on the far wall, and it's raining outside. Then I feel my pocket vibrate, so I reach down and I have a text. It's a picture taken from directly behind me, so you can actually see the back of my head and everyone else at the table. I look behind me and nobody's there. It felt weirdly sinister. I woke up totally exhausted, sweating all over, and had this buzzing sound in my ears. I had to just sit there with my head in my hands. It felt like my brain was just swimming. It was so bizarre. I tell my wife about it, and she's just kind of like, "That's weird, man." So a few months later, it's finally time for the bachelor party. We're sitting at a table in a restaurant that I've never been to before. I look to my left, and on the far wall is a big window, and it's raining outside. I start to feel like this all seems very familiar. The brother of my friend is sitting across from me, and he reaches into his pocket, pulls out his phone, and looks at it. He smirks and shows me his phone. It's a picture of the back of my head and all of us sitting at the table. I whip around, and my friend's sister was sitting a few tables away from us and sent the picture as a joke. She and her family didn't know we were going to be there that morning. At this point, I'm really freaked out because the only details that were different are that it wasn't my phone that got the message and that it was my friend's sister who sent the picture, not some otherworldly presence or whatever. It seemed too specific to be a mere coincidence, and I'm weirded out by it to this day. I went on a vacation and lost my headphones on the last day. I used them every single day, so I thought I may have lost them on the beach. My family and I looked all over the place, but nothing. Checking pictures to figure out the last place I had them, I realized I had them on me a few hours ago. After like an hour, I just gave up and we had to leave. When I arrived home, I went to my room and there they were, rolled up on my nightstand. My whole family was speechless and a bit scared too. An overall confusing experience that kinda haunts me to this day. Now, a lot of people like to discredit these stories based on just the fallibility of the human mind, which is honestly pretty hard to argue with. However, the fact that there's literally photographic evidence of him having those headphones on the trip just adds a whole other layer of complexity to this. Back when I was around 11 or 12, my family was planning on moving from Arizona to Texas. I remember having a dream that when we moved there, I went to a park in my new neighborhood. I distinctly remember the park having this big spiderweb-looking net in the middle of it that kids would climb on. I thought this was sort of weird because I had never seen anything like that in my hometown. When I was at this park, I met a kid named Wyatt Bauer. I woke up and didn't think much of it. Then, a few months later, we moved, and in the new neighborhood, there was a park with a big net similar to the one in my dream. This was weird on its own, but the weirdest part is that a few weeks later, when I was at the park playing with my brother on the big net, I met a kid named Wyatt Bauer who became one of my good friends for the time that I lived at that house. This is the only time I've experienced anything like this, and I've never had premonitions before. I was chatting with a passenger next to me on a Delta flight, and we were both waiting for the passenger to arrive who had the window seat. So he clears the seatbelt for her, and he sees sunglasses wedged against the wall. He pulls them out, and with them is his old crinkled upgrade ticket with his name on it from August 4th. He claimed he lost these sunglasses nearly 4 weeks ago on the same flight. The only thing odd was that he was in the 14th row when he lost them, and the ticket even said so, but we were in the 13th row, and that's where he found them. He put them on and was so happy. I was telling him about near-death experiences in the cath lab and about what people say, and he was soaking it up. So was the girl in the window seat. He kept saying all the way home, "I can't believe I found my sunglasses." He took it that we were all meant to sit together, and he talked with all of us all night on the flight. This happened with a group of about 15 family and friends when we went out to lunch. My one friend and I decided to cover lunch for the people our age since one of the guys just lost his dad. The waiter brings back our cards after splitting the bill. Everyone at the table saw me put the card away in my wallet before signing the receipts. After taking care of the tip and everything else, I couldn't find my card. At this point, everyone is confused because they saw the waiter hand me back my card and I put it back in my wallet. We searched the whole section we were sitting in and looked between every crack, but still could not find it. I finally gave up and decided to cancel the card, but right before I did, the waiter brings back my card and hands it to me the same exact way he did before. At this point, everyone at the table is freaking out and confused because we can't explain what just happened. It's almost like we stepped back in time and replayed the events that had just happened. We were all freaked out about it, and we still can't figure out what happened, but we kinda just accepted it. I was walking through the bush on the bottom of this ravine on the property I grew up on during a heavy storm, just kinda being a sad little kid like I was, when, amidst the wind, I hear someone calling out. I look around and see this girl up on a rock. She waves to me and, in a voice that sounded like it was right next to me, said, "Hey, come up here and sit with me, it's dangerous down there." I'm confused, but also like 8, and the girl is like 16, so I climb up to the rock and sit beside her. She pats me on the head and says, "It only gets better from here, just don't think about it so much." As I try to ask who she is and what she means, a side of the ravine that I was in collapsed with a tree, and where I was gets filled in with a ton of dirt. I leapt up shouting in excitement and fear, but when I turned to the girl, she was gone. I've never forgotten how warm her hand was on my head or how she sounded kinder than anyone I've ever met since. Honestly, I just love stories like these. Many people like to say that this is a horror channel, but honestly, I disagree to an extent because although some of the stories are definitely creepy, others are like this one, which are sort of oddly comforting, if you know what I mean. Unsettling for sure, but oddly comforting at the same time. If you have a story like this, or really any unexplainable experience, be sure to drop it in the form in the description. To give some context, I was not intoxicated, I don't do drugs, and I wasn't tired when any of this happened, so that kind of makes it harder to give sense to what had happened. It was a summer in the middle of the day about 1 p.m. My family was coming over to my house for my mother's birthday to help prepare everything. I have a cat, and she was resting peacefully on a perch I had bought her. While cooking, I hear a small meow outside. I look over to see my cat laying outside with scratch marks and blood all over her. I rush the hell outside and I hear a meow again. To get to my backyard, I have to turn a corner, so it does take a bit of time. So I get there and nothing. No blood on the ground, no paw prints, nothing. I look around the entire yard, practically having a seizure with how much I was shaking, and yet nothing. Defeated, I just go back into my house, ready to message my family about my cat, until I hear a meow again. I look over to where she normally sits, and there she is, sitting on her perch. Fast forward a few months, my cat is getting old, and she somehow got outside. There's a wild dog in our neighborhood. My cat sees it in our backyard, the dog sees my cat, and the dog attacks my cat. I go outside frantically with a kitchen knife, but the dog was long gone. And there it is, the sight that I saw months ago. My cat was on the ground, bleeding, scratch marks, heavily injured in the exact damn position. She ended up passing away from her injuries. I, female, slept in the basement of my house my family lived in, alone. A big basement with 2 bedrooms, computer, laundry, and living room. It always felt chilly, though. I remember hearing a woman laughing and joking in the hallway outside my room. Some nights I heard a child cry and whimper. I would also hear men having conversations. I always checked for the source of the sounds, but obviously never saw anyone or anything. I would also see weird things happen too. It became the joke in the family that I was losing it. One night it came to a head when I, 19 years old at the time, heard someone banging hard on the wall my bed was against, and then a loud scream. I ran upstairs to check what was going on, and nothing had happened. No one else heard anything. I went back to bed and later woke up at exactly 2 a.m. to find my shoulder aching really badly. I wrapped my hand around to my back to rub it, and my fingers went through into my skin. I freaked out and turned on the light to see in the mirror a huge gash in my shoulder. My mom took me to the ER for stitches, and the doctor couldn't understand how I did something like that because my skin looked like it just ripped open. It was so jagged and deep. The weird part is there was only blood on my bed, nowhere else. I showed my mom to prove that I hadn't sleepwalked. I still have a sweet scar on my back to remind me of that night and the hell I went through. Now, this next one is very difficult to explain logically. I do want to preface by saying that the human mind does tend to have some very odd habits sometimes, and it's possible that that's all that this was. However, the true cause behind what happened may never be known for sure. This was the weirdest experience I have had to date, and I still get choked up and emotional when I think about it. It was 2010, and I was 25 years old, living at home with my very supportive parents who were helping me through college. It was an early autumn afternoon, around 4 or 5 p.m. I was in my room doing some homework on my laptop at my desk. The desk faced the wall directly across from my bed, and my older style box TV was on top of my dresser to the left of my desk, about 2 feet away. I was, as usual, procrastinating doing my homework, so I was mindlessly watching some dumb TV show. Because my TV was so close, I stood up instead of using the remote to change the volume on my TV. As I reached out my left hand to press the button, as if a switch flipped, my entire environment changed. This affects me still to this day. I still feel it in my soul that something strange happened. I didn't hallucinate, it was real. I was back in my childhood home, 20 miles away and seemingly 18 years in the past. I was standing in front of the only hallway closet in the one-bedroom house that I grew up in. The house was over 100 years old, and the closet was one of those with the doors that slide open on tracks. The door to the closet was open, and my already outstretched left arm was reaching toward a very distinct item. When I was little, my mother had this perfume bottle that, for some reason, I was absolutely in love with. The perfume itself was cheap and didn't smell particularly good to me. The bottle was glass and shaped like a bird, maybe a dove. Its wings were up and outstretched. It was beautiful, but it had a broken wing. So there I was, one moment in my somewhat modern bedroom in 2010, the next in the old one-bedroom hallway across the county, apparently back in time 18 years. Before my hand could actually make physical contact with that precious bird, the switch flipped again. I was back in front of my TV, outstretched left hand and all. My mind could not comprehend what had just happened, and I felt immediately sick and dizzy. I was in such a state of shock and confusion that I just walked out of my room, down the hall, into the living room, and out into the front yard. I could do nothing but lurch over, hands on my knees, and try desperately to catch my breath, but mostly my sanity. This experience was so jarring, so real. I was physically in front of that open closet, reaching for that damn bird bottle. Then I wasn't. I'm not prone to hallucinations and was stone cold sober when this experience happened. Has anyone had anything like this happen? I still have no explanation, and it might have just been a weird break in psyche, but it was not a dream, and I was not under the influence of anything or under any unusual stress. When my dad was about 7 or 8, he swears he encountered something paranormal. One night, when his parents were out, he was just laying on his bed reading a comic and about to fall asleep. He said right as he started to doze off, he felt something cold wrap around his feet like painfully frozen hands, as if someone had just took a swim in an ice bath. He was yanked of his bed and almost into his hallway before he managed to let go, but he saw nothing when he turned around, not a soul in sight. He screamed, thinking it was his brothers playing a joke, but he didn't think it was funny. He tore up the house looking for them, but couldn't find anyone. He didn't want to check outside because it was dark and knew if they were out there, they'd have to come in eventually. When his parents got home, he told them about what happened, and they kind of looked at each other in unison blankly. They told him he was by himself. His brothers had been at a sleepover for hours, and there's no way they could have snuck in and done it. The house they were staying at was clear across town, about a 15-minute car ride away. After this all happened, my dad would hear a dragging noise in the ceiling, and even his brothers and parents noticed it. They looked in the attic a few times, and there was nothing. He still brings it up every once in a while. Gives me the creeps. When I was about 6, my mom was driving me to my elementary school when I saw this appliance place with an old washing machine in the front window. Like a really old one. As soon as I saw it, it was almost like I had a flash of a memory, like a flashback a character would have in a TV show. It was of a woman. I couldn't tell what her face looked like, but she was in some old-looking clothes, dunking some clothes in some water inside the washer and scrubbing to clean it. I quickly asked my mom before we reached the school if she remembered us ever having an old washing machine like that. She looked at me with the most confused expression I'd ever seen her make before saying, "We've never had one of those." I was very confused. It felt like we did have that washing machine in our house at some point, and it felt like a nostalgic memory for me, so I asked her, then why do I remember it? She said that when she was little, she used to have what was in the window, and she'd have to pass clothes through some rollers and dunk them in a large tub at the bottom, which was what I remembered. After we moved a few years later, we didn't really speak about it much, but I always get this nostalgic feeling whenever I think about it. Was the woman I saw my mother? I'll never know for sure. Now here's another one of those experiences that dives into that sort of mother-child connection. We've all experienced that feeling of déjà vu. Usually we just attribute it to some old memory long since forgotten, but what if those are memories from people who came before us? Obviously that's a pretty wild theory, but I mean, we literally sprouted from these people, so who knows? There's so much we don't know about biology and the human mind, so I don't know, anything's possible to an extent. Last year, I, a 23-year-old female, moved into my grandma's house to look after her. She lives on a big property with a field, an orchard, large garden, and a small wooden area at the bottom of the driveway. I know this place like the back of my hand. I've visited here since I was a child. We also have a neighbor whom I've met a few times. He has a wife who baked us a bunch of really beautiful cupcakes that her husband brought over. However, at the start of this story, I'd never met her. So, a couple days ago, I wanted to repay the favor, so I made a batch of 20 brownies with my sister and started my walk to their house. As I'm walking down the driveway, I snuck one out to eat myself because I figured I earned it. So, I'm walking and eating. Their house is on an embankment above my grandma's driveway, which leads to the main road. To get there without trespassing on their land, I'd have to walk to the main road and then head up the hill to a side road and enter their driveway that way. As I walked up their garden, feeling self-conscious about trespassing but actually not giving enough of a shit not to, I tripped on one of the steps. I face-planted because I was holding the brownies and didn't want to drop them, and I ended up tumbling over a couple steps too. As I'm lying there, shocked and a little pained, I hear my neighbor's wife come running down the garden. She was asking if I was okay, obviously surprised to see me there. Bear in mind, she'd never seen my face before, so she must have been extra baffled. I told her I was just there to drop off some brownies I'd baked, but as I'm saying it, I notice the tub of brownies is just missing. I was literally holding them 30 seconds before. Cue extreme embarrassment. I assumed that they'd fallen down the garden somehow in my fall, but this isn't a small tub, it's relatively big, and there's no sign of it anywhere. After 10 minutes of looking, I admit defeat and tell her sorry. I'll make her some more and bring them some other time. Red-faced, I retreat back up to my grandma's house. Then, yesterday, my cat and I are chilling in a tree in my grandma's orchard when my cat suddenly jumps down and jogs all giddy-like to the shed at the back of the orchard. It's a really decrepit shed that hasn't been opened since, 2006. It could contain gold bars and I wouldn't have a clue. I thought he just saw a mouse or something, but I was curious, so I followed him. There's a ditch filled with needles and brambles right outside the shed, and I notice my cat is trying to find a pain-free way to get in the bushes there. I'm like, you're fighting a losing battle there, my guy. That's when I see it. The corner of a box, peeking out from beneath a bunch of fully war-torn needles. But I have jeans on and the pain tolerance of all my ancestors, so I waded in and edged it out. Lo and behold, it's my tub of brownies. I can't really describe the degree of absolute confusion I felt at this moment. You ever get that vibe that there's a bunch of calculations going on just outside your field of view that you will never comprehend? Extremely bewildered, I took the box inside and opened it. They're still completely fresh, so I figured I'll take one over. I go to my neighbor's, this time the long way around, knock on the door, and it's the wife. I apologize profusely for last time and hand her the tub. She was looking at me a little perplexed and then said, "I don't think we've met before, have we?" I described to her the last time we interacted, and she has no memory of it at all, but I recognized her. It definitely happened. So I dip again, embarrassed once more, and this is the point I'm at now. This was during the pandemic, 2021. I, a 53-year-old female, work in animal rescue as a cross-border transporter, and I have a Nexus pass to get back and forth. The card is the same size as a driver's license, but it's kept in an RFID envelope to protect the data. One day, I was supposed to go back to the US from Canada, and I reach into the side pocket of my purse, where it's kept, to pull it out for crossing. So I reach in, and my pass isn't in there. Now, here's the odd thing. I had just put the pass in the pocket 30 minutes prior as I was bringing a load into Canada. I knew I had put it in there because I checked before I zipped up the pocket. I'm paranoid about losing my pass, so I'm ultra careful with it. I'm trying not to lose my mind because I need to go back, and losing your cool isn't helpful with border agents. I pulled over to the side of the road and methodically went through my purse. Nothing. I empty out my purse completely, looking at each item carefully to make sure I'm not confused. No Nexus pass. I search the driver's seat. Nope. I get out and do a grid search of my whole vehicle. Not there. I go back to the CBSA office to look around. I ask the officer I dealt with. He tells me that he saw me put it in my purse pocket. I must be losing my mind. I thank him and leave. I checked the car and my purse again. Nada. I even went back that night to see if the cleaners found anything. Nope. Meanwhile, I let all my rescues know that I can't cross. I don't know what's going on, but I order a replacement just in case. I am stuck for a month waiting for the replacement, periodically searching for the card. It comes, and after I activated it, I go to my purse to put it in the zippered pocket so I won't lose it again. As soon as I opened the pocket, there's my old Nexus pass. I've turned that purse inside out looking for that bloody pass, and it's sitting in the pocket, all pleased as can be. I feel like I've gone and lost my ever-loving mind holding 2 Nexus passes. I yelled at the poltergeists that must have been farting around because that pass was gone. I had other people looking for it too. What pocket universe did it slip into for all that time?